You're listening to the Totally Indian Football Show by Humans of Indian Football.
Welcome to a brand new episode. It's a new week, and a lot has happened in the past 1 week. So, a lot of heartbreaks, a lot of breakups. I hope none of you personally have gone through any of it because we have two clubs who've parted ways with their beloved coaches. Based on basically its performance, it's not giving desired results, so they've parted ways. We are fresh off from a game between Bengaluru FC and Northeast United, and these two are going to be our talking points for today's episode. I'm your host Siju, and you're listening to the Total Indian Football Show. We have three of our panelists joining us. We have Sandeep Menon. Hey, what's up, Sandeep?
Hi, how are you guys?
How has it been for you personally? Are you happy, good, covering BFC? You saw that?
It's different because first time in 7 years, it's sort of like a crisis, so different. But again, they're not here, so it doesn't feel the same. I think it'd be much more impactful if they were actually playing out of Bangalore.
True. Welcome to the show, Arko.
Hi, Seju. It's good to be back. And,
joining us from your home.
Yeah, in Calcutta. Yeah, the I-League's happening here. There's a bubble, unfortunately, which means I can't go and watch, and that's making me sad. But I mean, it is what it is, and I think we just have to be thankful that the I-League season is happening at all. So
absolutely, some great matches in the opening weekend. Before that, let me welcome Ajay. Hello, Ajay.
Hi, Siju. How are you guys?
Doing well, man. So let's directly get into it, right? Because anyway, we are fresh off. Like I said, today we are recording this on a Wednesday, and we watched a Tuesday game between Northeast United and Bengaluru FC, and 1-1 draw. Well, this was the second match for under Musa for them after Carles parted ways with BFC, and then we also got to know that Gerard Noose has left. Well, we did a whole episode around Northeast United. I thought the club must have heard the episode. I wish they had. Probably they would have given some more time and trusted Gerard Noose. But anyway, I think the nature of the league is such that you need quick results, and when you don't have, everybody ends up sacking their coaches. So BFC now joins that rate. Let me start with Sandeep. Sandeep, when they lost against, I'm not wrong, Jamshedpur, right? We did speak about, okay, this looks bad, how bad they are playing, and you were mentioning about there's a lot that needs to be done, recruiting and all of that. But did you see the sack coming the next match after the next match?
No, actually, I thought they would see out the whole season and then decide on, moving on with the coach. I think Carles's contract was also probably coming to the end at the end of the season. The sacking at this time seems quite surprising because, first of all, it looks like the number 1 and 2 spots is gone. So the ATK and Mumbai are so far, ATK, Mohun Bagan and Mumbai are so far ahead of the competition that they were never going to challenge for the Champions League spot. Then it's about the other 2 spots to get in the semi-final, which at this point looks sort of like a lottery. Like nobody's really consistent. Everybody's going up and down and things like that. Maybe they could have snuck in at the last minute. So, anything could have happened there, but yeah. It's just surprising. I didn't expect that from the team because you don't really gain anything from, losing a manager in the middle of the season. It's not like there is a relegation to stave off and things. And as we've seen subsequently, it's not like their performance have drastically improved either. So that the timing was a bit surprising.
Now, just for our listeners, Sandeep already has a podcast called The Injury Time, and they've already discussed at length about this issue. So we don't want to keep it repetitive, but let's get in more voices about this whole fiasco that BFC are going through. Arko, how do you see, now we always, we always term BFC as the professional club, right? They got in, though we've had 100-year-old clubs, we say that BFC has gotten the sense of professionalism when they started off in 2013, and rightly so, because we've seen them put up a great management, a great team, and since day one, they've been winning. So now suddenly we've seen this. Is it too much to handle for the side of BFC?
Too much to handle? No, I think every team goes through ups and downs, troughs. Of course, I think the teams the management and the fans have just got to use winning all the time. They have hashtags 6-6, 5-5, 4-4. So, yeah, last season was their first trophyless season. since inception, if I'm not mistaken. That must have come as a rude awakening. This season, it it seems to be they seem to be going through the motions. Last night, if luck hadn't gone their way, if they got a bit of luck with the goal, yeah, they might have lost, and that I think would have been their fifth straight loss, right? So I think they realize they're in a transitional period. They realize they need to start planning for next season here on. There's no point trying to salvage this season. Although I won't say that they're too far off again, because who's four? I think fourth is on 15 points. They're on 13 points. Northeast to sack their manager on 12 points. So it's not like they're very far off. In fact, East Bengal are still in the running. They're only 5 points behind fourth. They're 10 points, right? So anything can happen this season. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think there'd be a sense of feeling at the club that we should be doing better. We should not, let's say, be leaving our top 4 chances to till the last day. We should probably be trying to stamp our authority on the league. But I think between our discussions, with Sandeep also I mentioned, they're no longer the financial powerhouse that they were only were, right? So it's an interesting parallel to draw. When East Bengal Mohun Bagan dominated Indian football, the reason they dominated was because they were used to paying salaries which were 3, 4x, 5x of what the other clubs could pay, right? Then came the Goan clubs who were willing to match their financial might, right? So, which means this created tussle between them and the Kolkata clubs, right? Then the Goan clubs abruptly pulled out, right? Then we thought, now the Kolkata clubs will dominate again. But then again came along BFC, right? So then it became the two Kolkata clubs and BFC which had the financial might, right? And till then BFC and the ISL clubs used to play in a different league. The BFC used to play in the I League, Kolkata clubs in the Kolkata clubs also in the I League, but not in the ISL. When BFC came into the ISL, then they had some sort of continuity as opposed to, let's say, the ISL clubs who also had the same budgets but maybe not the same continuity, right? Which is why BFC still did well in its first 2 seasons. Last season, again they finished top 4, but then it could have been better. And now what we've seen is that now even ATK has pretty much managed to keep the same squad, right? Goa, we've always spoken about how they've been the core of their focus has been continuity with regards to foreigners and all of that. You're seeing Hyderabad, who are building on a good finish to the last season, and will probably be engaging in continuity because they have a very good core of Indian players, right? So now you're getting a situation where BFC is no longer the one of 3 or 4 financial powerhouses, no longer the only standout team to play for, because now someone might say I want to play for Goa, someone might say I want to play for even Hyderabad, right? We don't know what the next upcoming generation is thinking, right? We don't know what the upcoming generation of Arrows is thinking. So you're in a situation where BFC has to reinvent itself, right? Again, has to establish a USP which is different from that of the other teams, right? Which is always been BFC style, right? So how do you do that? How do you go from here? That's a big question that faces them right now.
Ajay, your initial thoughts on when you got this news. One is that, and the other one, do you see this as the real test for this club?
Yeah, I think Carlos had already conceded defeat in terms of the Champions League qualification, which I think sent repercussions, right up to the management level, because Bengaluru FC have never been in this kind of situation since inception, as both Sandeep and Arko spoke. So that's a bit disappointing. I think he was quite vocal about the recruitment as well, in terms of the transfers that were made by BFC during the off-season, especially the players who left, the likes of Ferran and Nishu Kumar, and probably they weren't replaced suitably. So, he's been vocal about it. So I think all of us saw the sacking coming, from a mile away, given the start that they've had to the season. So it's a new feeling for them because they've been so dominant and successful. But I think the club has, enough winning mentality in its DNA to bounce back. And this would be definitely a transition season for them, because you would there are a lot of veteran players in that squad, and I'm sure that when the next season comes along, there would be a lot of changes and probably a new style, a new philosophy, a new influence in the club coming through. So having said that, it'll be great if they're still in the running to qualify to the top four. So they might very well make it to the playoffs, and after that it's anyone's gamble in terms of winning the ISL trophy, not the Shield. So I'm looking at the fixture list. They have a break now in between, a break to rejuvenate and refocus their energies. And in the meantime, that the next fixture is against Kerala Blasters. Now, Kerala have East Bengal before they play Bengaluru FC, and if again that's anyone's guess actually who takes all 3 points and who takes the initiative. But if Kerala manage to win that, they're just 1 point behind BFC, and obviously both these clubs have got a rivalry of sorts, and it would be a very tensely fought battle. So I'm personally looking forward to Naushad Musa at least being there for the remainder of the season, because there's no point in getting another coach right now. And even with regards to Northeast United, who sacked Noose, I think Khalid Jamil should be given the remainder of the season. Similarly with BFC.
Now, Arko mentioned this about the whole finance part of it, right? And we also discussed, offline that while BFC were playing and doing their thing, there were other clubs who took the time to improve as well on certain things that they were not good at initially. So BFC has a lot of catch up to do with that, especially the budget part of it. Sandeep, you've been following BFC since the start and very closely. How do you think, or what according to you would be those key factors that the BFC would need to undertake to match up the likes of an ATK, MB or Mumbai City that they are now? Because considering they're in the same league, you have to up your game, not just on the pitch but off the pitch as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the main focus will now be this transition, which has two parts in it, which is one is recruitment and second is the proper transition in itself. Because it seems like when you see this team that you on any given day you can write down say 9 of their 11 first teamers with your eyes closed, and they're always going to start because they don't really have an alternative to those players. So while ATK, if you see Mohan Bagan, they can change most of their squad. They often take off their corners, put Indian players in. You never know who's going to start on the wing back positions, especially for Mumbai. So they have a lot of depth in their squad. But if you look at BFC, the rebuild ahead of them is not just the senior players, but it's also some of the players who are maybe not seniors, but they've been there for such a long time that there is sort of a fatigue, and maybe the club and the player both need a break so that they can sort of reinvigorate and restart. Start from somewhere to go in the next lane. They also have to look at the succession plan for Sunil Chhetri. And really, that's a very difficult thing, right? Like he is, as a character, as a stature, as a person, his stature is just as high as the club itself, because he is the face of Indian football. And often we have seen, even in Europe, with people like Totti and Raul and all these legendary players in clubs, spacing them out is not easy in any way, shape, or form, because they're still playing. They are getting the numbers, and there is not really anybody who is coming and challenging them for that position and things like that. So it's very difficult. And then the recruitment part, like Siju mentioned, I have done this in my podcast, but because we are in this totally football league show here, I've done some more detailed digging to give some more depth into what I wanted to say. So I went and checked. So look at the foreign signings from 2016, 2017 onwards. Only Yonan, Serran, Dimas, Eric and Miku, you can say, has been successful. There was Edu Garcia for a brief while and Alvaro Rubio, who was excellent, but he just came for the AFC Cup and it's a very short-term deal. Subsequently, in the same time, they've signed Robin Orales, Cameron Watson, Djugovic, Colonel Glenn, Victor Perez, Tony Tavalen, Bruno Nobrega, I think that's his name, Segovia, Luisima, Chisco, Chencho, Onbu, Neely, Augusto, Frater, Brown, Upset.
Braulio Nobrega,
yes. This is their other foreign signings that they signed. And it doesn't look like any of them, it's not like anyone came there and made an impact. Not that when they left, anybody raised an eyebrow. So essentially, those were not successful signings, and that's a lot of signings. And some of them were done, mid-season. Some of them were done before, and quite a few of them, including someone like Chenzo and Onwu and Augusto and all of these guys, have done well in different clubs within the ISL itself or within the Indian system itself. So maybe it's not. We can say that maybe it's not completely the players not being up to the level. Maybe the recruitment does not realize what the team needs or the coach needs or the style of football the coach wants to play and get the right player that the coach wants. And they never replace Miku is something that we always say. But they didn't replace someone like Lenny Rodriguez either, who was very influential in the way Roca played, under Roca played, which is what everybody says the BFC style of play, which I don't really agree with because, Roca was there for 2 years and he only played that outstanding football for 1 year. And on either side, it's bookended by Carles and Westwood, who both played defensive, counter-attacking, very utilitarian style of football. Especially Carles, who banked a lot on set pieces. So when you say BFC style of play, I think you should pick any one of these, not really the Roca's one outstanding season. That's probably an outlier in that sense. Now we look at the Indian recruitment. Now you signed Ashik, who was one of India's most, you had a lot of expectations from him as the attacker, played him as a left back. Udanta has regressed. So initially our thought was, you're going to put him against Udanta, maybe push the two of them to see who's going to come out better. Maybe they'll get two great players out of it. But maybe that was a call of the coach and not so much the management. So let's keep it that side. Togesim Hoikip, who they signed, was one time the highest Indian goal scorer in the I-League. He is hardly playing at all. They signed Zotia from Aizawl after he won the title with Aizawl. It never really played as a centre back. Prateek Chowdhury is not a starting centre back for a club who's aspiring to win titles. Keane Lewis didn't really impress. Then they signed Eugene and Reno, who are not the players that they used to be when they left the club. So it seemed like to me that they were banking on their foreigners and the trusted Indians that they have, the Bekes, the Chetris, the Khabras, to pull them through and fill these people as, fill in the blanks with the recruitment. And rather than look to improve the team, which is where I think they fell back because other teams went on and signed players who are going to improve their teams and push the Indian contingent especially. So when you look at all of these things, the recruitment has not been up there. Maybe it's a difference in the way the club wants to go and not the coach wants to go, or the coach got the players but he didn't. Maybe like the Ajit Kumar situation, I don't think he got the player that he thought he was going to get when he was brought in as a replacement for Nishu and chose not to go with him, playing Beke and all these kind of things on the left side. So maybe that's on the coach. But the recruitment, from all the things that I've seen here, is not really up there. So when you are trying to make an impact in a situation where you are no longer the superpower who can spend money, who has the dominant, monetary muscle, you will have to recruit smarter. And that's where I think it's going to be very hard for them because whoever they're going to bid, I think just about any ISL club can bid for them either, other than maybe 2 or 3. They all can bid. Like Nishu could have stayed if BFC could have offered him more money. But that's the situation they live in. They have a budget and they want to work within that, I guess, and that's it. So these are really big things that they have to get in order. And I know it was long-winded, but I wanted to be thorough.
Yeah, definitely nothing long there because it was needed. Like this is the problem, and you've addressed the problem clearly and you've put the points out there. Arko, what I want to ask you is now Sandeep mentioned in detail about the recruitment part. How much of a does a coach have an influence into the recruitment part? One. Second, if now this is a squad that even Musa has to handle. Okay, if not to a great extent, but at least we saw some decent football from BFC this season when Musa took over the first match. And then against Northeast, not a very great, but a second half was a bit okay, where they came back and they equalized. So how much of a issue or a fault is with does it lie with the coach that, probably he has to do with the squad that he has? Or rather he has got, and he had to limit himself because of the budget issue that we mentioned. But then again, how much of a issue is it with the coach than the recruitment team, who probably should have done a better job?
So firstly, let's get one thing clear, right? The two teams which are leading the table have the highest budgets, right? I don't think there's any doubt about that, right? Then you have a bunch of teams who have, let's say, pretty much more or less the same budget. There are some who have, let's say, a higher budget in the middle rung rather than, let's say, I think BFC, JFC have higher budgets than, let's say, a Goa or, all those guys. ATKMB, Mumbai City, like I said, are ahead. Now, you as an owner or at the management, you can have 2-3 things that, that influence your decision, right? And to be honest, you can't have everything. You can't have an attractive style of play, and you want to win all the time. No, right? BFC, when it won the title, also there was a heavy reliance on set pieces. Last year also we saw a heavy reliance on set pieces. So essentially the recruitment should always be according to what the coach wants, right? Or what the envisioned style of philosophy is. Now we don't know whether every team in the ISL has a philosophy that they want to play according to, right? We know that Habas does, we know that Lobera does, we know that Ferrando does, right? But we don't know whether this philosophy will continue once the coach goes out. That's the real question here. And secondly, when you talk about players and players which fit the system, like again, you have to ask what is the system here? Is there a system? Is there do I have players that fit the system? Do I need 2, 3, 4 players that I need to recruit more to get the system? At clubs, what we usually see is that in Indian clubs, recruitment is a combination of the coach's inputs, the scouts' inputs, the scouting manager's inputs, the technical director or the director of football's inputs, right? So there are many people sitting and taking a decision collaboratively. So I can't say it's only the coach's idea, right? But of course, yeah, the coach is the guy who finally has to make do with the players he gets, right? I mean, he has to ultimately figure out how to put the pieces of the puzzle together. At BFC, what we have seen is that there is still a clear idea of how they want to play. We know that there was a reliance on set pieces. We know that they want to, score through set pieces. We know that, they want to, defend, they want to keep their shapes compact. We know they want to defend, in numbers at the back. We know that really worked well in the first game of season against Goa, right, where they went 2-0 up. But then Goa got a quick fire double and, it ended 2-2. But by and large, they were the better, as in, they were looking the more threatening team that day. It's a difficult question to answer as to on whose shoulder does recruitment fall, right? Like I said, it's a committee that's there, or of which the coach is one member. He's not the be it end all, right? But yeah, when a coach is from Spain, let's say, or from a country where India gets a lot of coaches. I think after Spain, I think England would have provided a lot of coaches. Owen Coyle, Robbie Fowler. Then you have John Gregory, right? Then what we see is that the coach goes to his sources in that market and, he gets information on those players, right? For example, I think I heard that, when Goa wanted to, let's say, get a Pandita who was playing in Spain, Juan had more, information on him because he was playing in Spain, right? When they wanted to get Ortiz, we know that, Edu spoke to Ortiz and, and he convinced him to come here. So essentially in his home market, the coach is king. But when it comes to the Indian, sometimes, other people have more inputs because they've seen these guys for years. They know players who know those players. They try to get feedback, how is the mentality of the player? Is he a complete professional? How is he? There are 1,000 questions. It's not just the technical aspects of the player that you should be looking at. Sometimes a player can be really good, Indian players included, but he can be lost in the wilderness simply because he doesn't fit the ethos of the team, right? There are some teams which are more demanding than others, right? So, yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I don't even know if I answered it properly. Recruitment at BFC also, I think it's not done by just the coach. I think it's a combination of a lot of guys giving their inputs, right? Including players, staff, ex-players, right? Ex-coaches, right? Assistants, scouts, that's the way it should be. But ultimately, it's up to the coach as to how he wants to play. and how he wants to use the pieces at his disposal.
Ajay, do you think winning, like the whole winning habit, and that's how it was for BFC? Like Arco mentioned earlier, they had hashtags for every season because they kept adding titles after titles from the inception. So has winning a lot? Is it hurting now? Is it hurting BFC?
No, I don't think so. I think, as I told earlier, that it's obviously a good thing to win because that becomes part of your DNA. But then every club goes through cycles, and they're actually nearing the end of uh, a youth cycle. So uh, the transition has to happen, and there will be a time where there would be a time where they would have to rebuild and then try to get back to winning ways. But I think with regards to what we've seen over the years with the owners and the management and their ambitions, they always want to win. So I totally fully expect them to bounce back. If not this season, because the season is we've just reached the halfway stage of the season, and they still have a good shout to reach the top four, and then from there, who knows. So do not write them off just as yet, but I think the fans would sort of have to accept that they're close to the end of an era, and the probability of winning this year is lesser than that of previous seasons gone by. So yeah, just accept what it is, and then move on. I mean, if I had to draw a parallel, obviously it's not a direct comparison, but apples and oranges. But the way that Man United fans who experienced one of the greatest eras, and they haven't won anything after Jose Mourinho left them, and yeah, it's something similar. It's not the same, but I would say that there's a lot of parallels that can be drawn between these two clubs.
Definitely nothing over there. Anyway, moving on. Let's leave that point. Let's just see that point you didn't mention earlier about the whole comparison. But Sandeep, coming to you, what I wanted to ask you was, what do you think is the next level for BFC from here on?
Next level. How do you mean?
So what I mean by what do you think is the next first step that they should start? So this is a rebuilding process for them. Let's leave this season out because looking at it, I'm not sure if they are looking for another coach for the period that we have ISL for. So once this is gone by, what do you see? How do you rather see, and what do you want to say that this is the first thing that BFC should look at?
They have to get a new coach, and we have often seen them. They in the 2-3 changes that they did make. One time they focused on continuity. One time they wanted to play a certain way. So they had a vision going into certain decisions that they've taken. But I would personally like to see an Indian be a head coach. But it's easier said than done because there are only a few of them who are eligible. And on top of that, maybe the foreign players may not respect an Indian coach as much as they would respect a foreign coach. So these are things that are the finer details that we often forget. Like even while I keep saying on Twitter and things that Indian coaches need to be given, the reality of the situation is probably won't be. But the main thing is they need someone and they need a plan, which is not like a year's thing. If they don't win a trophy next season, that's fine, as long as there is a progression in the way they are trying to play and things like that. And I think probably if everything goes well, next season is going to be a longer season as well. So you'll get more time and all those kind of things. So they need someone who is going to bring in and slowly change the nature, the starting 11, and have more youngsters. And it's not like what yesterday when Paul Mayfield was saying, oh, their average age is this or their average age is going down with every substitution. That doesn't mean so much because they're just making changes now. They need a set player and next generation of players to come through. And to be fair, this is the club under Ashley who produced international players. Like Eugene rose to his international status from there. Reno was there. Vineet was there. Keegan Pereira. So they have done this before. So they need to go back to the roots maybe. And whoever is running the club, like Mandar and all, are quite successful in the way they've managed to run the club by and large. So I'm sure they know what they're doing. But it's a long-term change, not a one-time fix. They need to face off a lot of players. Dimas, I think, probably end of the line for him this season. Maybe, 37. So maybe that's it. Eric is there for another season. Yonan has been there for 5-6 seasons now. He's still good. But the rest of them have to slowly start making way. Like yesterday, I was very pleasantly surprised to see Khabra playing in the middle because that's the way I remember Khabra as a guy in the center midfielder in Chennai and East Bengal and things who used to give out a lot of assists and things like that. So slowly they have to build the next generation of players. Whether that is through recruitment or through the youth system, I don't know. They have some players in the youth system who can make it, but we haven't really seen them play at this level yet. So you never know if they can make the jump. So it's going to be difficult, very difficult to say how long this will take and what direction they will go. But I think it starts with the vision and to get the right coach in. That's the first and foremost thing. I think probably they'll only sign a new coach next season. He'll only be taking over the team, I should say, next season.
Arko, anything to add to it on this topic of BFC before we move on?
I think nothing as such. I feel, like I said, there are no reason for panic bells because they are only 2 points off the top four again, right? And we know that anything can change in Indian football. Like HFC lost 3 matches on the trot, Hyderabad, and then they won 2 matches convincingly, beat 4-1. I think at the start of the season I told you that this is going to be the most unpredictable season of the ISL yet. East Bengal looked dead and buried and they got 7 points from 3 games. So, I mean, anything can happen. Like, honestly, BFC fans won't know their team's fate until maybe the 18th, 19th game, right? So, there's no cause for concern. I mean, if fans are expecting that, that BFC would storm to the top of our table, that was always going to be tough, right? Yes, there is a 12-point gap between Mumbai City and BFC. But, Mumbai City have been taken over by the City group. I think it's quite inevitable that, they would come out with their big guns, right? But yeah, I think for BFC, the immediate push will be to finish in the top 4. Even if they don't finish in the top 4, I think 5th or 6th also would be credible considering, how the other teams have also strengthened, right? Just seeing a Jamshedpur who are not giving teams an inch. You're seeing East Bengal who, like I said, beat BFC and, held Goa and, have been playing good football. We saw Odisha pump 4 goals past Kerala, right? I mean, I don't think I need to say any more on how unpredictable the league has been yet, right? There are no free wins in the second half of the league because now teams are more or less settled, right? Teams are more or less playing with the same personnel. Unless you have new personnel coming in Jan. I know some teams are moving in Jan, right? But not everybody is doing that. And I mean, if you ask me to pick a top 4, yeah, I'd say Mumbai and ATK. But beyond that, I think 6 to 7 teams or even 8 teams may be fighting for those 2 spots. Anything is possible. My message to BFC fans is just hope, just believe. Even like I said, 5th, 6th, not bad. This season, just take it, move on, build on this. You have youngsters playing, you have the likes of Amay and Parag and all of those guys who come in doing a job, right? Give them your backing, support them. The only way they grow is, if they'll make mistakes, inevitable. There's a first season, right? They're not going to, what do you say? They're not going to turn into world beaters overnight. They're not, right? So give them time. The worst thing you can do is now call for a complete overhaul because it doesn't help anybody. But yeah, I think some things need to change and they know that better than all of us sitting here, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
And it's a long-term thing, right? What we are talking about here. Because we are only saying it's crisis because it's BFC, who we are used to seeing fighting for the title. For most teams, and we noticeably saw that Northeast being at the middle is not good enough. For most of the other teams, you'll be looking at it and thinking, they're doing okay. They're still with a shout of, being in the top 4, which they might make also for all you know. But yeah, it's only exemplified because of the fact that it is Bengaluru FC, and we are used to seeing them storm. They walked the league twice in the ISL.
Yeah, exactly.
And we saw them last year also. Last year also they finished 3rd and they qualified for the AFC, right? And we still saw some sense of disgruntlement. I mean, that I think it was more to do with the style of play and all of that. But yeah, I mean, most teams would kill to have that season. Finish third and qualify for the AFC Cup.
Ajay, or any final thoughts that you want to add quickly on this topic?
No, I'm done. We can move on from BFC.
Great. I think definitely there's more things than BFC because that's not the only club that we have to talk about. Probably if it was a fan podcast, then they could have gone on and on. Now it is a test that, and we have seen BFC come out mentally quite strong from many such incidents that probably they have gone through. So probably this is a new test for them. But will we see them come out in flying colors? Is the top four still achievable? Is that their goal? All of this only time can tell. None of our experts can answer that question for you. We have to wait and watch how they play and how they go ahead. And just like Arko mentioned, this is the most unpredictable season, so we have to wait and watch. Now, let's move on to, I think, I-League. And I think even Arko mentioned a bit about ISL games as well that we went through. So I feel let's spend some time on I-League. And it was the opening weekend. We saw 5 games. I'm going to throw the question to the boys that which match did get your attention? I'm sure none of them are picking the first game, so we move on with that, which was a 2 p.m. kickoff. So I'm going to pick mine, which was GK, so Chennai City FC. As expected, Chennai always comes up with some great game. I think that as a squad, again, to look up to, once again a season to look forward to. But let me come to Sandeep. Sandeep, a game that caught your attention and you want to talk about quickly.
I would say the Aizawl game. I just feel little weird because I know they lost, but they had the chances, but they didn't convert, and there's a lot of issues of their own making. And I would ask Orko for more into this because they are a team who is literally ripped apart every single season, and they have to put in a new team every year, and they still are mostly competitive in terms of results may not be as competitive, but in terms of performances, they are always competitive. So I would like to throw that question out to Orko, because he would know that. How difficult is it for Aizawl to keep doing this? And this is a league that has relegation also.
I think Sandeep read my mind. I pretty much going to pick that game only. It was Roundglass versus Aizawl was the fixture, even though we saw Churchill put 5 past the kids. I mean, what do you say? It was a really good game, in all honesty. Right? The story would have been a lot different if Princeville Emeka had buried his chances. But, Punjab, just my reflections on the game before I get to Aizawl. Punjab looks solid. It's the first game, so give them time. They'll also take time to come up to speed. But I like the fact that they played with 2 Indian under-22 centre-backs. A lot of naysayers are saying, oh no, they'll go on to concede a lot, but they kept a clean sheet in the first game. Right? Yeah, they looked solid. Coming to Aizawl, it's really difficult. It's really difficult putting together a squad again for the umpteenth time, rebuilding again. They've lost who this summer? They've lost Chara, Paul, Isaac, and these are just the names I remember. William Lal Nunfella. There are many. There are many. They keep losing at least, I think, 5, 6, 7 every year on free transfers. That's crazy, right? Aizawl, I think everyone here would agree that Aizawl is the number 1 selling club in the country. Yeah, right. Number 1 club which loses players every year, and it's crazy how they manage to rebuild again and again. I think it's only because a superior conveyor belt of talent that lies there in wait, right? Everyone just saying, you go, then I'm going to sit here and take your spot next year, right? And Isaac left, so then there's Muanzova and there's Ramlan Chunga sitting there and saying, this year it's our turn. It's our turn on to go and play, right? And that only happens if the players are engaged in a lot of games apart from the actual I-League itself, right? How do I simplify this? If a I-League team is playing 40 games a season, it benefits them. Right now, Aizawl is the only one doing that because apart from the I-League, which is 18 games in itself, they're playing in 20 other matches, right? So Aizawl is a very good idea of who's coming in next year, right? They have a very good idea of who's performing well in the MPL, right? The Mizo boys, not just Aizawl, right? Even a Chingabeng, Chanmari are playing an IDA Cup. They're playing the Mizo IMA tournament. They're playing your. Some of them are playing your local. What do you say? Regional tournaments. The MFA, instead of terming this as cape or illegal, what they're doing there is they're trying to bring this under their aegis and then trying to legitimize these tournaments because they understand the benefit of game time, right? If today I cannot plan my progression if I don't know where the next crop of players is coming from, I can only do that if I've seen them in enough games apart from the actual I-League itself, right? So that I think that is a very big factor here today. Let me just give you an example. When Aizawl, the year they played the AFC Cup, they played almost 50 matches that year. I think that's kind of unheard of for an Indian team. They played the IDA Cup, they played the I-League, they played the MPL, and they played the AFC Cup. And the MPL plus the I-League itself is about 37-40 games, right? So that's a crazy number of games for them to rotate, experiment, right? The under 18s today, they play under 18 reserves. They play in something that is known as the Aizawl Division Football League, right? Which is pretty much competitive because your MPL is pretty much your Aizawl based teams only, right? So you know where your next players are coming from. You just need to make sure that that you have them in line to have that succession plan in place, right? You need to have, and because Aizawl know that we are going to lose players, people are going to move on to greater salaries either in the I-League itself or in the ISL. They are mentally prepared, right? That yes, I'm going to lose my best 3, 4, 5, 6 players every year, and they're dealing with it. They're coping with it, and swimming with it, right? The only thing I think from the first weekend that that really worried me about Aizawl was that they couldn't convert their chances, they couldn't put it away. But the second half they came back roaring. I think they were slightly the better team. They shaded it, and this is a team that's only going to grow in strength. But this year again, the I-League looks to be competitive, and we know that Sudeva and Arrows won't be relegated. So essentially, the team which finishes last, barring these two, the Sudeva and Arrows, they're off. So it could be any of 5, 6 teams based on what we saw on the first weekend.
Yeah, Sandeep, you want to come in here or?
Yeah, sure. The other game that we want to talk was this Real Kashmir FC. I was a little disappointed with them because obviously they conceded a early goal when it reasonably well to come back. But we consider them as one of the title favorites, and if you have aspirations for silverware, and these are not the points that you should be dropping. And it absolutely amazes me that so many years, 2-3 years down the line, also we see Mason Robertson still getting the goals and being one of the main goals threat. And it's just, I don't know, he's played defense, he's played attack, he's played everywhere. So he seems like maybe someone in ISL should look at him.
Well, Ajay, coming to you. Your thoughts on the opening weekend we saw of I-League? One game, huh?
Yeah, so I love the Gokulam Kerala versus Chennai City game. It was crazy, manic, full of action. Very, very good to watch as a neutral. Good fun. I think Chennai City had no one in the technical staff present over there, and Vijay Nagapan scoring a good goal, an individual goal. That was quite good. And I mean, the two foreigners linking up, the Ghanaians linking up for Gokulam. So it could have gone either way. Chennai City ended up with all the 3 points, but it was good end-to-end football in between. Good action, and I think I had a lot of fun. I love games which are open-ended and both teams going for it. So it was a good watch.
Great. Now I'm going to pick, I know today, this episode you're listening to is on a Friday and we have a weekend of fixtures, but I'm going to pick one which I feel is going to be interesting. And I'm going to ask the boys to pick their team that's going to win. It's East Bengal versus Kerala Blasters. Reason why I say it's interesting because both the teams did not have a great start. They still are struggling, but both of them have found some kind of decent football back into them. Kibu has won. East Bengal has got a draw and won a game. So conference kind of okay, doing well. They can do a little better probably. But Arko, I'm going to start with you. If you had to pick a winner from these two teams from this game, which one would you pick? If there is a winner at all.
I'd hate to be the team which loses in East Bengal Kerala Blasters, to be very honest, right? Because whichever team loses probably going to get the no end of stick from the fans. But yeah, I mean, both teams performing decently. I would feel the inclusion of Bright and, finally we're seeing, Magoma doing well before also, but what has happened is that, now they have a focal point up front and, Pilkuda, as the East Bengal fans have started calling him, Anthony Pilkington, hasn't made the team. So I'd say East Bengal are marginal favorites, but I like the fact that Kerala won their last match. It depends on which Kerala really shows up on the day. It'd be really unfair on them, to judge Kibu by this half season, because we know that teams take some time to get going. I think Kibu definitely deserves the time, and small edge to East Bengal, but this could go either way. My other match to watch from this week would be Goa versus Jamshedpur. Looks good, right? You presume that Owen Coyle will be there, and he'll put two men on the goal line to see if the ball's crossing or not. Then you have Mumbai City versus Hyderabad. I think that's an intriguing one. You really want to see what happens in that, because Hyderabad are on this high wave of momentum that they're riding. The front men are really firing well. Kianizi and Aridane are linking up, and I think it's working like a charm. So, but Mumbai City are just swatting everybody aside, and they did the same thing with ATK. I mean, 1-0, they were the better team on the day. So it's really interesting to see what gives, in Mumbai City versus Hyderabad. Yeah.
Sandeep, who do you pick as a winner from this game? Maybe you can pick a winner from this team and then an I-League match that you're looking forward to.
Okay, winner from this match, I would give a slight edge to East Bengal, only because they have better foreigners. That's the only reason. No other particular thoughts into it, because I think Kerala foreigners have largely just disappointed this year, especially the defenders, the two centre backs. One of them who was dropped also. So, and Gary Hooper has also been disappointing. So because of that, I think, might just be East Bengal edging it. And they've been playing quite well also, East Bengal of late. So you have to give them that. And from I-League, I want to see Chennai and Real Kashmir. Now, this will be a test for Real Kashmir, who have openly said that they want to go for the title. They were quite close the last 2 years. Chennai is not going to be an easy task, so Chennai City versus the Real Kashmir would be my game to watch. And it's a clash of styles also. It's always interesting.
Ajay, the same question goes to you. A winner from East Bengal, Kerala, and one I-League game you're looking forward to.
I think the I-League game is the Real Kashmir Chennai City game. No questions about it. Between East Bengal and Kerala Blasters, I'm not going to go for the obvious. I'm going to go for a Kerala win with a little help from Devjit Majumdar.
Great. That brings us to the end of episode number 8 of the Totally Indian Football Show. Thank you so much for tuning in, for those who have tuned in. If not, and if you're still looking for a podcast to hear about Indian football, please, there's a podcast called the Totally Indian Football Show. There's also Injury Time. But hey, come on. You can have one extra episode podcast as well. We're available on Spotify, iTunes, among the audio platforms, and if you are not a listener but you want to watch it on YouTube, then you can do that as well, but again, as it's an audio on HOI's YouTube channel. So please like, share and subscribe. Share it with your friends who follow football or who like Indian football. Have a great weekend, enjoy the games, come back, and we will episode number 9 will be dropping next week. Thank you so much. I'm your host Siju. Thank you very much.